Welcome back to another weekly outlook from JWFX Trades. So we'll take another little look at what has happened over the last couple of weeks with gold and with GBP JPY, and then we'll take a little breakdown and see what we may expect over the coming week or so. So let's begin to break this down. Okay. First of all, we have gold just looking on the higher time frame, so we're now looking on the monthly at the moment. Now, as we look at this on the monthly, we can see that we had this area of resistance previously around this area here, and we had a little area of support down towards the bottom around here. So we'll just kind of mark those out to begin with on the monthly. Now you can see from doing that, we can identify that the month of April has begun quite strongly, and we've again started trying to push out above this area, currently trading above the 2000 area. And we had a big push up earlier in the week where we had a little push towards 2030 and so on. Now, a big thing to try and take note of at that point is we have had attempted breaks above this area before, which you can see was back in around sort of August 2020. Of course, that was to do with COVID. And then again, we had another attempt around March and April of last year. That was to do with Russia invading Ukraine with the war. So you can see these are like key life catalyst events in the news that are triggering these big pushes up here, but still on the monthly bias we've struggled to close above this area. Now as we zoom out there, notice we're viewing this on the monthly, these are looking at all-time highs of gold at that point, and we've struggled to close above this area. So that could be a good key indicator of what may happen throughout this month as well. So we'll watch with interest to see how that plays out. Now, if we just scale that down a little bit further onto a weekly outlook at this point, and we'll just readjust our zones to make sure they're nice and accurate, which they look pretty good there. So on a weekly basis, you can see we have closed above here back in August. We didn't get the closure in March, and once again, we're just pushing up here for the time being. And we can clean up any other zones and stuff as we want to. Okay, so let's see if we can try and identify at this point from a daily perspective what's going on here. Okay, so once again, just on the daily, I was going to try and tidy those up because that looks like a key strong area of resistance at this point, which on the daily time frame now, if we just move this slightly more centrally for us, you can see that we've had a couple of attempts to break through. We have broken through. We then started having a bit of a push down on Thursday of last week, a good push down there. Bear in mind, Friday the market was closed because it was Good Friday, so it'll be very interesting to see with that perspective what actually happens, because although the gold market was closed on Friday, it was also NFP, non-farm payroll, and if you looked at that and looked at any other currencies, for example against the US dollar, so for example GBP against the USD, you'll have seen a big push to the downside before it then started retracing again. So the open on gold come 10 p.m. tonight, Sunday, will be really interesting to see how that goes, and that's UK time, by the way. So from a daily perspective, we're coming to retest this sort of key area around here of the 2000 area, which is obviously going to be a good key psychological area. Looking at that, so based on the 2000, if we then break that down a little bit more and look at the 4 hour, so we can get just a touch more detail here. So I'll just try and trim these areas, just make them slightly neater for us as well. So if we've got a little sort of retest around this 2000 area, which is good. And then we can try and identify this area of resistance that's been formed at the top around 2025. And then based on that, we can also see, if we zoom out, because now what we're trying to picture here is if we got a break above there, well, what would happen at that point? So let's scroll along and see. Well, as you can see from here, if we just zoom this area in, if we did get a break and closure above there, we could probably expect a good push up towards this level around the sort of 2050 area. So that would be really clean traffic for a potential push all that way. Now, I'm certainly not saying that that's potentially the case this week. Okay, what we would need to trigger that that, like we mentioned earlier, would be some kind of key news event that has not currently been priced into the market. That's the really important thing. It would need to be something new. You're talking about like China, Taiwan sort of conflict, anything to do with North Korea, etc., etc. The Russia-Ukraine thing is not going to drive gold all the way up towards 2050 at this moment in time, unless something new transpires that has not already occurred. So that's quite an important thing to bear in mind. So our key areas that we're looking at are 2050, we've got 2025, and we're down at $2,000 per ounce. So that's what we're looking at. So we can now then try and see, well, you know, what other key areas do we have? Well, it looks like we've got a pretty good key area of reaction here, which has formed as resistance here. It's formed as resistance here, formed as resistance here. We've had a little area of support where it's pushed back off of. So that looks like a good key area around that sort of 1985 mark. So what we could then imagine, well, if we managed to, on the 4-hour, for example, if we got a little closure below here, you may expect a little retest, though not necessarily, it might just be a little wick up to then continue back down towards that area there. Similarly, what might also happen is we could just form and check this as support to then continue back up and just form the sort of intraday range potentially. And then, like we see, if anything does occur at that point, you then say, well, do we have a little break above that area to then continue up? The likelihood is, I think, because we've got this really clean area here, we had NFP on Friday, it'll be interesting to see where gold opens up when the market opens. It could potentially actually open up down towards the bottom over here. So we could see like an open around this area. Now, if that actually happens, well, what would you expect to see? Well, because we have this really clean area to the left and it's clear traffic all the way up, you would expect that gap up to take place really quickly. So we may see that we open up down here to come straight back into this intraday range potentially, and then at that point you're looking for a reaction to try and get in on a trade later throughout the week. Okay, in terms of that, let's take a little look and see what is occurring through the week. So of course, Monday we have a bank holiday, so it might be slightly lower volume. The bank holidays are in the UK, most of Europe and Australia. I don't believe the US have Monday marked as a bank holiday, so there should be some volume coming in, particularly around that New York and NYSE open. Okay, moving on throughout the week, we do have news on the dollar on Wednesday. So we have the CPI data coming out on that. We also have the Bank of England Governor Bailey speaking, so that'll be interesting to see how that moves for the pound. And then importantly, we have the FOMC minutes at 7 p.m, so that'll be quite interesting to see if there's anything moves the market with that as well. And then looking ahead on Thursday and Friday, we have more red folder news, unemployment claims, we have retail sales and so on, core PPI, so you know, we have a lot of stuff going on in terms of prices of goods, etc., that could help move the market. So it could be a very interesting week with regards to gold. Now let's take a look at GBP JPY. So once again, we'll start from the top on the monthly outlook, so we can just try and get a little feel for how things are shaping up, and then we'll just zoom on down to the lower time frames from there. So once again, what we'll do is we'll identify the key areas of reaction. So it certainly looks like we have an area of resistance formed at the top here, and on the monthly outlook we have an area of support around there. So we'll mark those off first of all, and then we'll take a look at this little monthly range that has been formed in here. So taking that down for a closer look on a weekly outlook, and we'll just clean up any zones. Now those zones that we've just marked on are pretty good, they're pretty tight, so we're quite happy with those. And again, you can see on a weekly basis we're kind of stuck in this range. Now it is a rather large range, so plenty trading opportunities in there. You're talking well over 1,000 pips, so it's a huge range in fact. But it's important just to try and get a feel if there is a clear direction. Now on the weekly, if we just zoom out a little bit on the weekly, you can see that, you know, overall we are trending upwards. We've got this sort of like upward trend taking place. Now it'd be quite interesting to see if that general sort of trend is respected at all, see how that goes. Now I'm not a trend line trader It's just interesting just to kind of mark them on, because I'm not a big believer in indicators and things like that, just to try and give you a good picture of what's taken place. So on the weekly, you can see that over the last couple of weeks, let's take a look in here. So we've had this area of reaction, which was support down at the bottom here. We've then retested that area and then started to push up from it. We've then got this minor area of resistance formed here, because you can see it was support at that point when we broke below. We've retested, we've tried to break above there on the weekly a couple of times and struggled again, and it looks like we struggled again last week with a slight closure just below that area as well. So that's quite interesting. Now, based off of that, what we would then do is we'll then have a little look at the daily and just see how that is shaping up. So based on the daily there, we did get one deal where we closed above there, but what you'll notice from that is that we actually had a rather large rejection wick, just the same as we did further back in February. So because of that, and then a big bearish closure underneath there, it looks like we're retesting this. Now, when we look at that, what are we looking for trades? Well, for me, one of the key things that we're actually looking for with our trades is lovely clean candles to the left, which is what we have at this point here. So certainly from there then, on a daily perspective, we're then looking and saying, well, if we've got these lovely clean candles to the left, what is the likelihood that we would reject off this area and then look for a closure below to then take the sells back down towards the 162 area. Now bear in mind we're currently at 164, that's plenty scope, a couple of hundred pips to try and take potential trade in that area. So that would be one likely outcome based off of the daily. Let's take a look at the 4 hour for a cleaner look at that. Okay. So based off of the 4 hour then, let's just kind of see what that's like. So we've got this area that we've marked on earlier. That could probably do with just like a little cleanup, but we'll just kind of leave it as is just for the time being. So we've got that area where we've just kind of rejected off of, we come back through, we're now retesting that. So our possibilities at this point are, well, let's say we got a break above there, that looks like we've got like a little minor area of reaction here. So it may be that we kind of come back off there to retest if this is now support, making a higher low, and then we'll continue up to make a higher high. Now our overall target in that instance would of course be this key area at the top here. Why? Because again, we have clean candles. Where you have clean candles, you get clean moves. That's the key here, isn't it? So as we break up above there, that would certainly be an area to potentially target. Now similarly, we have, if we just kind of mark this on, because we're on the 4 hour, this will give us a slightly more detailed look here. We've clearly got some support down here. So as we've got the support formed down at the bottom, this doesn't, for me, look like a very clean area, and I'm not the type of trader that just takes a sell at the top to try and get the entire move. That's just not my personal style. However, like I've said many times now, what do I love? I love clean candles. Look how clean this area is to the left. It moves straight up, it moves straight down. That's exactly what we're after. So for me, from that point of view, what we would therefore be looking for, can we come down to this area here? It may be that we get a little sort of, again, an intraday range forming. We may get a little break of the low. You may get a retest or just a little wick up there to then continue back down to the lows of there. So they would be over the next sort of few days the potential outcomes with GJ, but however, depending on news, etc., we may see a little range going on. I wouldn't expect a huge amount of movement potentially on Monday with the bank holiday, so that may be where the range comes before we get those breakouts to one of those key areas there. And of course, any news events that occur during that time, any FUD, etc., we'll see what kind of happens, because as we know, the yen is favoured and there's any times of uncertainty and doubt. So at that point, obviously, we would expect to see and anticipate that GJ would take a little dive down. Similarly, if we get any good news for the pound, we could see that nice clean move to the upside. So those would be the two sort of main outlooks that we're looking for. Once again, just checking the news, it looks like we've got a little speech from Bailey on Wednesday at 2 p.m. UK time. And apart from that, there's not a huge amount of other stuff coming out. We've got the GDP on Thursday morning at 7 o'clock. Now that does sometimes move the market just a little bit, but you often find the GJ news doesn't move quite as much as the US dollar moves the gold when we get news on the dollar. So they'll be the two sort of possibilities that we are looking for today. If you are in my group, which is linked below if you're not, in case you would like to join, I will be sending out some trade ideas throughout the week, and we'll be having a little look at potentially AG as well, but we'll send a little breakdown in the group for that. Other than that, thank you for checking out the video. Please like and subscribe it for more, and as always, if you've got any questions or comments, pop them down below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible.